Salarpuria Sattva. Trust, it's what we build. Presents the Realty Debate powered by Reliance Home Finance with Manisha Natarajan.
Welcome back to the Realty Debate and our focus DDA or Delhi Development Authority, the top body responsible for acquiring and managing land in Delhi along with providing affordable housing to people. But this centre-led institution has been slammed time and again for having accomplished very little in the 60 years of its existence. So much so that Ajay Markan, as the housing minister in the Congress government, made a strong statement that DDA had full monopoly. It was a regulator, planner, land dealer, yet it did very little. So if you give me a bulldozer, I will first raise down DDA's office. Our debate is focused on whether DDA has long outlived its utility, or are we being too harsh on an organization which is perhaps shackled on several fronts. My panel today, Ramesh Biduri, MP Lok Sabha and member BJP South Delhi. Also Ramesh Menon, Director Certis Realty Limited and land expert. A.K. Jain, architect and town planner and former commissioner of planning DDA. Kamal A. Mitra, Chinoy, Professor Indian Politics, JNU, Prashant Solomon, MD Tintals India and Treasurer of CREDAI, NCR. This time around, I am going to go to Mr. A.K. Jain, architect and town planner and former commissioner of planning DDA. Mr. Jain, this is your moment, sir. Really, I know that DDA gets more bricks than bouquets. So are we being unfair to DDA?
This happens with anyone who does the work. DDA was created in 1957 by an act of the parliament, and it has over the years of 60 years of existence has developed core competence in planning, and it is also having competence in engineering and finance. Everyone knows that it is quite a capable body. So it's very difficult to create an institution, and it's very easy to dismantle and demolish it and criticize it. So I think what it requires, DDA was basically conceived as a developer in 1957. The things have changed. So what DDA has to change has to become a visionary facilitator and a visionary regulator and a visionary coordinator. And what is happening today, as we have seen in the land pooling policy also, very artificial kind of politics has been created. But Lieutenant Governor is the chairperson of the DDA. He is also head of Delhi government. He is also representative of the central government. So why there cannot be high-powered committee under Lieutenant Governor which takes on board Delhi government and various organizations like NCR Planning Board, Delhi Urban Art Commission, and Urban Design Group, that means the Delhi Urban Art Commission, Heritage Conservation Committee, etc. And we can go ahead. It's not difficult. So I think some initiative have to be taken and some proactive things have to happen. And Delhi government has a very important role, as I said, that 600 kilometers of the road in urban extensions have to come up, basically by PWD, Delhi government. They have not even started with anything. The plans are there, zonal plans are there. They have to initiate with the land acquisition or land pooling of those areas.
So your contention is that you know, even though it's always the view on DDA is negative, it does have a lot of capabilities. Let's just take a quick look at 5 compelling reasons to believe that DDA has become an outdated organization, and we will have other panelists coming in and either defending it or supporting it. Now, first, DDA's allegation against DDA is that it couldn't even keep track of its own land holdings. The result is sprawling slums, unsafe and unregulated structures, and haphazard development on land which could have been used to provide affordable homes. According to estimates, DDA's total land holdings adds up to about 7,000 acres, but experts contend that the number would be much higher. Professor Chinoy, do you really believe that DDA has outlived its utility?
Well, look, if you want a body which does all this, then the only way to make it function well and expand is to expand it in certain areas and not expand it in other areas. But I don't think Delhi planning as a whole has been particularly good.
Okay, so
and I think
they've not been able to grapple with just even land planning in a proper way.
And I have a suggestion. I think that some professional land planners and others who might be from the private sector, their services should be used to strengthen DDA.
Okay, let's look at the second big reason why DDA gets more bricks than bouquets. When it officially took up building houses in 1967, the entire Delhi was its canvas. It could have gone in any direction, there was abundant land, but all the DDA managed was 4 lakh homes and facilitating the development of another 6 lakh during this 49-year period. Now, if you look at the 4 lakh figure, and Mr. Biduri will, of course, also add to this point, and he has made this point, this translates roughly to about 8,000 houses per year for a population that has increased at an average of 5 lakhs per year since 1991. बिदुरी साहब, ये तो आपको भी पता है, आपने ही ये फिगर हमें भी बताया था, तो आप ये बताइए फिर जो केंद्रीय सरकार है वो डीडीओ को क्यों रखे हुए है? क्योंकि आपके पहले की जो सरकार थी, हाउसिंग मिनिस्टर ने खुद ही बोला था कि बुलडोजर लो, डीडीओ को खत्म कर दो.
मैं पहले के मिनिस्टर की बात से सहमत हूँ. पहले के मिनिस्टर साहब ने जो कहा, अगर वो उस टाइम किए होते तो अच्छा रहता. 1957 के अंदर जब डीडीए बनी और डीडीए अपनी जिम्मेवारी का निर्वाह लंबे समय तक, जैन साहब को बुरा लग रहा होगा, अगर निर्वाह करती, 4 या 5 लाख मकान 35 साल में आप बनाएंगे और प्रॉपर वे में अगर आप मैप बना दिए होते लंबे समय तक, तो अनऑथराइज कॉलोनी जो दिल्ली में बिल्टअप हुई हैं वो ड्यू टू डीडीए ही हुई हैं. और जहाँ तक गरीबों को, अगर सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को क्यों लैंड पुलिंग का मामला लाना पड़ा? लैंड मास्टर प्लान सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के अंडर है, दिल्ली एनसीआर है, फुल स्टेटहुड नहीं है, इसलिए अर्बन डेवलपमेंट मिनिस्ट्री को जबरदस्ती घुसना पड़ रहा है. यहाँ पर एम्बेसीज हैं, वो मैं लंबे विषय में नहीं जाना चाहता हूँ. सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने डायरेक्ट इंटरवेंशन इसीलिए किया है कि लैंड पुलिंग के माध्यम से डीडीए लुक आफ्टर करने के बाद सभी फैसिलिटीज, एक मास्टर प्लान दिल्ली का बड़ा बने और उस मास्टर प्लान को बनने के बाद ये अनऑथराइज कॉलोनी बननी बंद हो, जिनमें आज गरीब लोग नार के जीवन जी रहे हैं.
चलिए, आपने जो मास्टर प्लान का मुद्दा उठाया, दिस इज ऑल्सो अ थर्ड issue against DDA, and the criticism is that DDA lacked vision. It formulated the first master plan of Delhi in 1962 and revised it after 28 years. बताइए 28 साल तक ये plan नहीं revise हुआ. 1990 was the time when it was revised, and the development happened according to that till 2001. Global norms say that a master plan needs to be reviewed every 5 to 10 years with long-term vision. Ramesh Menon, is that the biggest negative of not just DDA, I mean literally every big town authority?
Okay, only on DDA, let's give the devil its due. When DDA was formed in 57 and through the 60s and 70s, the private sector was a very, very weak entity in the country. And it did not have inherent ability for urbanizing the capital of a country. So DDA did. Now, post facto, we can now reflect back and talk about whether those plans were right or wrong. But coming to the current DDA, what it lacks is accountability. Because a certain organization, large, monolithic, evolves and develops a habit of not being accountable to anyone. So that is exactly the phase that DDA is going through today. And, I agree with Professor Chinoy. In fact, so much so that I have been to DDA, to Delhi Sarkar, to many other agencies, many a times with our proposition to work pro bono for the government, not just me, with many more people from the industry who are development focused. But sadly, we haven't found a role for ourselves. Having said that, DDA is an old and decaying organization. Organizations have to reinvent themselves every 10 years or so, but this one hasn't done for 50 years. It's high time that fresh infusion of talent, fresh infusion of thought, and very, very fresh infusion of capital may be brought in. Hence, DDA is a ripe case for reinvention.
Okay, reinvention, and it should be doing that, but let's bring you some of the other challenges which DDA does face. Now, the reason why DDA actually gets so much criticism is because when you're touching thousands of home buyers, it's a consumer business that you've got into. Now, look at some of these statistics, 24,000 applicants for 1981 Rohini residential plot scheme are still waiting for possession of their plots. 35 years on, only 11,000 applicants have been handed over undeveloped plots, while 13,000 continue to wait, and these 11,000 have also got it after the intervention of the High Court and Supreme Court. And finally, as Ramesh said, DDA has failed to reinvent and even innovate. Now, with all of this happening, just look at the ambitious plans that DDA have, and that's why we're doing this debate. It's announced the transit-oriented development plan with iconic 100-story tower in East Delhi. It plans to develop 3 sub-cities, Rohini, Dwarka, and of course has also proposed the idea of building 6 socio-cultural centers in different parts of Delhi. Let's hear all of these plans, and also I must say that we are very thankful that Vice Chairman of DDA Arun Goyal did speak to our correspondent Oinitam and answered all our hard questions. Hear him what his points are.
We brought about various systematic changes in the organization, the discipline and the way of working through tools like digitization, apps, whereby the organization, the entire team is now ready with the outlook and the delivery system that is expected out of DDA. And we, through our CCTV cameras and our X-ray machines, are searching the people who are coming and going out. We are identifying the touts. We have identified some, put their photographs at the front door of our office, that these are the guys who are not allowed. So we are in the process, and this has changed the culture from top to bottom. People know it. On the engineering side, we have introduced the e-measurement book, whereby entire measurement is online, being captured in real time with the GPS coordinates. On the transit-oriented development, the policy was notified in July 15, and thereafter the regulations were to be prepared. So we have had discussions with people, all the stakeholders. In the month of February, we came out with a draft. It was put in the public domain. People came up with a lot of suggestions. For the first time, DDA incorporated a large number of the suggestions. If you see the past of DDA over 60 years, we did come to public domain. We did incorporate some suggestions, but not wholesale. This time, a large number of suggestions from public have been incorporated because I feel the success of the policy is how many projects are coming, not how well it is written. So if you see, we came out with a master plan in 2007. Redevelopment of Delhi was a basic feature of that master plan. Except for few in the government domain, there haven't been many redevelopments between 2007 and 2016. So transit-oriented development hinges on redevelopment.
Okay, that's DDA VC, Mr. Goyal, and I think the biggest step, positive step he's saying he's taken is just to ensure that there is not too much corruption, that the charges of corruption at least come down with CCTV cameras, etc. But on the transit-oriented development itself, Prashant Solomon, here you have a case of 8,000 customers who booked DDA flats saying we don't even want them because of the quality, and here you have DDA saying that look, I mean, once these couple of things are notified, we are actually ready to go ahead with transit-oriented development. Is it a task too large that they're taking on with their capabilities?
I think the answer is really in more of public-private partnership, if you ask me. I think that DDA needs to involve more people from the private sector both in terms of planning as well as in terms of actual development. Because if you look at it holistically, once again, it's not just number of houses. We have a huge traffic problem in our city. What are you going to do once you build so many houses, so many more people? What about the roads? So planning has to be done holistically. We have a shortage of parking. We have roads which really need improvement. Traffic. We have to come out with some solution. Maybe elevated highways
so are
is
you
a solution.
saying that DDA should focus on planning? Okay,
I think it should.
Okay, it should focus on planning rather than execution.
You see, because can I just to quickly add?
Sure.
See, Manisha, the thing is that you have private sector people who can develop, but unfortunately, the private sector cannot plan. We cannot plan the city and say, okay, we'll build a highway here, we'll do this here. That is the job of the government authorities, and I think, frankly, they should stick to that because there's a lot of need for better planning.
Just planning.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Jain, come in here, sir. I mean, you came with an architecture background and town planning background. Do you think DDA should be taken away? At least they should be rid of housing as a portfolio. They should not be building any houses. And B, they should focus on just planning and the right planning for Delhi. Is that a good role for DDA, sir?
Yeah, planning is very important, and planning is the core competence of the DDA. And when we plan, it is not only in-house. For example, when master plan was made, there were 150 experts who were drawn from the academics, from the private sector, and from other government departments. So it is not correct to say that all the planning is done in-house by the DDA. And this happens in everything, whether it's the land policy, land pooling policy, or zonal planning. So this is one thing. Planning is very important. But I think if DDA would have not done houses for the poor, the Delhi would have been terribly bad. And DDA being very capable and competent in engineering and finance has been able to deliver. Of course, it requires certain amendments, certain modifications, certain changes with the time. But I think DDA has been a unique institution, sort of one window system, that it is not only doing planning like NCR planning bodies not doing only planning, and they are not in the execution, they are not in this thing. So I think this is important that we improve the working of the DDA, like the Vice Chairman has mentioned about the transparency, about the e-governance, about the e-tendering, and all these kind of things. So the systems have to be improved, there is no doubt. But I think planning has to be done, and coordination is very important when
Okay, so Mr. Jain, are you saying that DDA is competent enough to execute large-scale projects which it has announced under transit-oriented development? You think they have the capabilities, sir, today in today's time, and to give that kind of quality?
They have the capability, but they are. They have the capability, and they have outsourced certain projects to NBCC and other organizations. So there is no difficulty. Outsourcing is always being done by the DDA whenever they find that there is some specialization involved. DMRC is doing very good work, and they also do outsourcing and sometimes even work for the DDA.
All right, fair enough. And I would not expect you not to defend the DDA, and that's why, sir, it's very important to have you here as well. Ramesh Menon, I mean, so this whole discussion is centered around the fact whether DDA has outlived its utility, and if it's not outlived its utility, then what should its role be? Very quickly, let me get each person to respond to that. Mr. Jain believes that, look, DDA is a well-functioning organization. Its efforts at changing itself and becoming more transparent are extremely positive. You tell me, Ramesh Menon, what should DDA's role be today?
You see, you need an agency, whether it is in the form of DDA, whether it is form of any other name and style. You need an agency which is the monitor of development, which also keeps tracks of the development milestones, etc., etc. DDA need not look any further than the Delhi Metro Corporation for inspiration of how quasi-government or a government institution can undertake development, that too at a pace which is, milestone driven.
Absolutely.
And the second point I would like to make is DDA, has definitely a huge gap compared to, let's say, an L&T or any of its peers, including DMRC and the likes, in terms of the human capital. That is what is lacking as far as, because an organization which is extremely old in terms of average age necessarily does not have the motivation,
talent. Okay.
Yes, and the motivation to kind of think out of the box and develop the city into what DDA says, develop Delhi into a global megapolis, which probably is a lot of fancy English, but the roadmap is not at the moment visible.
Okay. Finally, I think, Mr. Biduri, final question to you. There have been, efforts at changing DDA's role. There was a bill getting ready in 2006, trying to change DDA's role, but somehow it just never showed up in the parliament. Is there any, let's say, intention with the current government to relook at DDA's role altogether within the current tenure?
DDA अपने आप में दिल्ली के प्लान के लिए मकान देने के लिए सफिशिएंट एजेंसी नहीं थी। मैंने पहले भी कहा, इसलिए लैंड पूलिंग लॉ लाना पड़ा है कि उसमें प्राइवेट जो डेवलपर हैं अगर वो आएंगे, डीडीए ने जहाँ करना होगा डीडीए करेगी। और जहाँ तक डीडीए के करने का सवाल है, द्वारका में डीडीए ने प्लान किया है, दे हैड डन गुड दैट टाइम।
हाँ, I agree. Some of it has been good work.
जो
You can't
अभी
deny that.
ट्रैफिक की प्रॉब्लम जताई और किसी से अगर डीडीए उसका प्लान प्रॉपर वे में बनाएगी और डेवलपर को वो लैंड अगर दी जाएगी, तो नेचुरल है रोड की उसकी वर्थ क्या होगी या लाइन डालने की क्या होगी, सीवेज सिस्टम क्या होगा, वो डीडीए विल डू दैट द बेटर।
तो आप भी ये मानते हैं कि प्लानिंग के लिए तो आप डीडीए को नहीं हटा सकते, यू मस्ट कीप देम फॉर प्लानिंग बिकॉज यू नीड एन एजेंसी टू प्लान दिल्लीज रोड मैप. Execution is the big question mark, and we're going to conclude the discussion here with some panelists believing that DDA should not be an executor, while some of them saying that look, it should continue in that execution role, and of course that's Mr. Jain on one side. Gentlemen, thank you very much, Mr. Biduri, Professor Chenoy, Ramesh Menon and Mr. Jain. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me, and I think it's very clear if DDA's role is redefined from being an executor to a facilitator, it could probably unleash a new direction for the organization. Currently, because of just its old lineage systems and heritage systems, it seems more set up for failure with not enough executive powers and fresh talent. So we are hoping that all of this will come into place. Goodbye, and thank you so much for joining me.